Hello, welcome back. Today I'm looking at all of the tulips that I've ordered and already planted, almost, for the 2024 growing season. I placed two main orders this year, and the first one is from Van Noort, and I ordered a few cases of tulips along with a few other things, including amaryllis. And the second one is Vessies. They are a mostly mail order, although they do have a physical retail shop in Prince Edward Island, Eastern Canada. But we're gonna look at the Van Noort order next. And almost everything I ordered on Van Noort was single tulips. I had a couple of issues with double tulips this year, which I did talk about in my last video, mostly mud and dirt related issue, but I'm trying a few things out to solve that this year. Because I was ordering tulips for this coming year, basically when my last tulips were blooming, that's how far ahead you have to order from the wholesale company anyway, I had decided at that point not to order any doubles for this year. So starting with a few classics. The first one I ordered was called Candy Prince. It's a beautiful lilac-y lavender color, 18 inches tall, which is good for tulips because I will be using these for cutting. This is a single early. The next one is called Antarctica, and I've grown this one before. It's fantastic. It's 20 inches tall. It's just a really nice, sturdy white tulip. This is a Triumph tulip. And then a nice bright red called Canadian Liberator. This is another Triumph, and this one grows to be about 22 inches tall. When you look at the photo of the tulips closed, the very base of the flower looks yellowish green, and that becomes a lot more prominent when the flowers actually open completely. The center of them will be bright yellow. The next one is one I ordered last year. It's called Cream Flag. It's a beautiful buttery yellow. I really love this color. It grows to about 20 inches tall. It is another Triumph tulip. So that's three of those that I have so far. And all of these so far are listed as mid-spring flowering. Next one is Negrita. This is another Triumph tulip, grows to be 18 inches tall. It's another one on the purple side, but a bit darker and brighter somehow at the same time. It's a really nice purple. Next one is a later blooming called Salmon Van Eyck. This is a really popular variety. It's a lovely salmon pink color, 20 inches tall, later blooming, so you get a little bit of that succession. I don't think I've mentioned yet, I have between 200 and 300 of each of these varieties, so there's quite a few. Actually, this is my notebook that I was working with when I was planting these, so I actually have exactly the number that I planted written down right here. Most of them are between 150 and 200. Yeah, 94 of the Candy Prince. This is just because I sold bags. I think I sold bags of 12 tulips, so there's a really odd number left over. Whatever was left over is what I planted, basically. And I ended up in one raised bed with 1,426 tulips. So I wrote them down exactly in what order I planted so that I would know when they came up, before they bloomed, which ones were going to bloom. I did not do that last year, so I was a bit smarter with my planting plan this year. This raised bed here is 4 feet by 8 feet, and I fit 1,426 tulips in it. Where were we? Salmon Van Eyck. That was a popular one. I ended up planting 130 of those. Daydream next, a Darwin hybrid tulip. Darwin tulips are really good for perennializing. They come up strong and tall every year. I've had a few different Darwins planted in my landscape for, I think 4 to 5 years now. And some of them, the flowers get a bit smaller over time. That's pretty natural. But to get, 4 years or so of good flowers out of tulip bulbs is really good. Speaking of which, Queen of the Night. These ones I have had a couple of dozen planted out front for 4 years now, and they've done great. I actually pulled them out last year because I want to redesign that bed a little bit. So there may be a few that come up as a surprise in the spring. But those were fantastic. So Queen of Night is one of the darkest tulips that you can get. They call them black. They're just a really, really dark, saturated purple. But in low light, they do appear black. It's really cool. I think they've come out with a new one recently. I don't know the variety, but it's supposed to be even darker than this one. So that would be really cool to look for. And Queen of the Night is listed at 24 inches tall. It is a good tall one, and it's usually one of the latest to bloom. At least here, we are zone 6. I don't trust that. I tend to plant, if I'm planting perennials, I tend to go with things that are hardy to zone 5, just because if we get a cold snap with no snow cover, that can severely affect how things overwinter. But I digress. Now there are two varieties of tulips that I bought specifically to plant as landscape tulips, and I picked them because I thought they would look really cool together. I've made this mistake before though of not paying attention to flowering time. So Dahl's Minuet is a very delicate, very unique looking tulip. The petals are thinner, but they sort of come outwards. I'll put a picture up so you can see what I'm trying to describe here. They are 20 inches tall. They're called Viridiflora tulips. Late spring flowering, and the other one, I skipped past this one earlier, is called Toronto, another Canadian themed one. This one is shorter, it's mid-spring flowering, so this one will probably come up sooner. But it is a multi-flowering tulip, multiple flowers from each bulb, which is really cool. The picture I'm looking at shows one main flower and then multiple small flowers coming off of each bulb, so I can't wait to see if that holds true. It does say great for cut flowers, but this one's also only 14 inches tall. So the Toronto will come up first, and hopefully being multi-flowering, they will flower for longer, and then the Dahl's Minuet will come up in between and flower a little bit later. And I really have high hopes for that as a combination for my landscape. I did put, I think, 50 of each in my cut flower bed, in that raised bed that I planted up, but I saved, I think I have 20 or 30 of each planted in a couple different places in the landscape. So I cannot wait to see those. Now in that same order, I have quite a few paper white daffodils, which are to be growing inside, and some mini daffodils called golden bells, which are mostly for landscaping also. Those have gone outside. I got some anemones for spring planting. Oh, the fritillarias, checkered lilies. These are really fantastic if you have wet spots in your yard and you want to plant some bulbs, which normally don't like a lot of excess moisture, tulips especially. But these are really unique. They really do have a cool checkerboard pattern. I have had a few dotted around, but I wanted a lot more, so I got a bunch of these on that order too, and did sell quite a few. I got some ranunculus, some red and yellow, and a dark burgundy. Why don't I have that picture? I did get a dark burgundy ranunculus also, I'm pretty sure. And that was all for my Van Noort order. Oh no, the amaryllis. I ordered 50 amaryllis bulbs. I got 3 varieties: apple blossom, wild Amazon, and Rhinette, and a third one. And most of those I have sold. I think I have 10 or 12 left over. I might keep them for myself. I do love having a lot of amaryllis around. But I want to keep this video mostly about tulips. I'm going to talk about my amaryllis in another video, hopefully within this week. So you should see that coming out about a week after this one. So that was the Van Noort order, and that order came to about $1,800. And a lot of the sales I made actually ended up paying for that order. And that was the plan, because now all those tulips that I've planted that I'm going to be pulling and selling as cut flowers in the spring will be all profit. So that was something that I really wanted to do with that wholesale order this year. Instead of sitting on that cost for 6 months from the time that it ships to the time that I actually start selling those tulips. Things like ranunculus and anemones, I ordered a lot extra of those knowing that they would sell really quick, and they most certainly did. The amaryllis were mostly for sale, and some of the daffodils too, and I think I sold a few bags of each of those varieties of tulips. So that pretty much, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but that pretty much made up the cost of the wholesale order. So I am even at this point, and then those tulips are going to be profit in the spring. So next we have Vessies. Now I'm in Nova Scotia. For those who are new or haven't heard me mention it, that's on the east coast of Canada. We're about 3.5 to 4 hours from Prince Edward Island. And that is where Vessies is located. I order a lot of seeds from them, but they do ship an awful lot of plants and bulbs and things as well. So a few months after I ordered from Van Noort and decided not to get any doubles, I started to second guess myself, and I panicked a little bit, and I went on and Luckily, they were having a sale, so I did get all these tulips for less than retail, even though the price wasn't quite as good as the wholesale price that I got from Van Noort. But I got some really nice varieties, and I'm hoping they'll look good with the singles that I ordered. So what I got from Vessie's was, first is Allison Bradley, and this one is, now most of these doubles are a little bit shorter. The Allison Bradley's listed at 16 inches. Now these are retail, so I don't have nearly the quantity. So there's 30 of those. Angelique, cream with pink streaks or pink with cream streaks, maybe a little bit of both. Either way, this one is lovely. It's listed as 18 inches tall. I have 30 of those. Apricot Parrot, I'm really excited for this one. There are 36 of these. Overall, it's a light pink, but it has some brighter orange and yellow splashes in the middle and some streaks of light green around the outside. Oh, and this is 18 to 22 inches tall too, so that's good. Aveyron. I'm not assuming that I'm pronouncing all these right, by the way. Aveyron seems right. This is a lighter pink. It looks like it's darker on the bottom and then fades to almost white at the edges of the petals. They're listed at 14 to 20 inches tall. I only have 20 of these. Blue Wow, finally. I tried to order this one 2 years in a row and I haven't gotten it. One year I thought I got it and I planted it and it ended up being white. Did not end up being blue at all. Although having said that, blue in flowers rarely actually means blue. This is definitely a cool purple toned. I'm sure it'll be beautiful nonetheless, but how many of the Blue Wow did I get? 18, not a whole lot. Dazzling Doubles Blend. They're calling these peony tulips, and this might be a blend of everything else that I got. There's some red in here, there's some apricot colors, some bright fuchsia, a little bit of what looks like the Blue Wow actually, and these came in bags of 25, so I got 2 of those. There are 50, and the height is listed at between 15 and 18 inches tall. So, and I've learned in the last few years that it is important to get a whole bunch of different varieties and different types and different shapes, because some of them might be susceptible to a warmer than normal spring or colder than normal spring. They might not like that. Some of them might need a lot more water than others. And so depending on the environment, depending on what your spring is like, if you order all of one specific type of tulip and we just happen to get the weather that that type doesn't like, then you're going to have a massive failure. So I did end up with some doubles after all. How many was that? 80, almost 200, a little shy of 200, I think. So 1426 planted in my bed plus almost 200, somewhere in the 1600 tulip range, slightly above. And that doesn't count actually the Toronto and Dulles Minuet that I've planted in my landscape. I do have other tulips around in my landscape too. These ones are just the ones that I'm specifically growing for cut flowers. So for growing for cut flowers, you'll have noticed from the video footage here that I jammed them so close together. They do not need any extra space around them to grow because we're going to be ripping these bulbs out in the spring. If you want to, however, plant your tulips in the landscape and keep them for the long term, you need to give them some space. Some varieties, like the Darwins, are a good example. They might multiply a little bit over time. The flowers tend to get a little smaller, but then the bulbs might multiply and you'll get more flowers in the long run. It's also really important that you leave the foliage if you want your tulips to come back next year. After the flower has faded, you can cut off the flower, but the foliage is going to continue to photosynthesize and feed the bulb. Basically, a lot of the energy in the bulb gets used up producing that flower, and then it needs to feed itself and regenerate in order to flower next year. So after the flower has faded, all that time where the leaves are just sitting there looking like they're not doing anything, they're getting ready to flower next year. So you don't need to fertilize tulips when you plant them because that's not really going to affect the flower. But in the spring is when you want to give them a little bit of feed, because those next couple of months when the tulip is growing in the spring to when the foliage starts to die away is when the bulb prepares its flower for the next year. So that's the difference, is you want to give them a couple of inches of space and make sure that you leave as much foliage as possible. I think the rule of thumb is 3 leaves, but the more the better. So if you want to enjoy tulips inside, cut above that top leaf. There's usually a good 6-8 inches there, and have them in a shorter vase on your table. That's perfectly fine, and then you'll still get flowers next year. But if you're going to cut that stem off closer to ground level, then you run the risk of not getting anything next year. So I'd love to know, do you grow tulips for cut flowers? Do you grow tulips in your landscape? And feel free to drop any questions in the comments below, and I'll make sure that I have a look through those and answer them. Usually within a day or so, I'm able to get to comments. So for now, I'm going to say thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.